Hi everyone. It's a great looking shed you're in. I'm actually in Bellerive on the Eastern Shore in Hobart today. Bit of family business down here, and the wonders of internet technology meant that I didn't scare Isaac and say I was going to be in Hobart and not in Castlemaine. I'm just doing it, and I'm catching a plane back tonight. So I'm here and I work at Delkaya Health. I'm not in Mount Alexander. I don't work for Mount Alexander Shire, but I live in Mount Alexander Shire in Jar Jar Wurrung country. And I've been there about 35 years. And I'm as local, I think, as most people are in Mount Alexander. And I have qualification background in social work. So I've been a very long-term social worker, and I've done every kind of version, garden variety, gnome variety social work over the years, community development policy work. I might have worked with some of you over the years as I worked out of Melbourne into rural Victoria. And I probably for about 25 of those years, I was up at La Trobe. We were very fortunate, I think, in those days when La Trobe University was funding regional universities and supporting economies locally. But I left in COVID because of the big crash, I think, in universities around that time, and have since really enjoyed working locally again in Castlemaine. So I started working in the homelessness team as a housing crisis support worker up here, because like you, it became very the housing crisis just reached epic proportion through COVID as more people tried to leave Melbourne and bought cheaper houses in Mount Alexander. They were still cheaper, and bought out a lot of the rental properties. And then we also had the Airbnb influx and just a lot of the housings. And you know the story of housing. I don't need to tell you the story of housing, but just the limited social housing. So the throughput, for housing. When I was employed there was the idea that I would do case management for 3 months. And in that 3-month period, someone could be helped from an eviction into another house, or from homelessness into a social house, where you know what the waiting list is like. So it was a madness. And it still is. So in that period of time, Homeshare was established in Mount Alexander Shire. And I was fortunate enough, or put my hand up and thought, this is such an opportunity. It's a lot more optimistic, an opportunity in the housing space to be organising and providing home share than it is to be trying to work with all of those dead ends in the housing space, because home share is not a dead end. So that's a bit of my background. My main message today, and I can go into as much detail as you like about home share, but my main message to start with is that I think at a community level, home share is very good for a number of reasons. It's good because it's actually really achievable by a community. And it is something that communities can be doing and feeling like you're doing something useful at a time when at the bigger picture, at the state policy level and the federal policy level, it's very slow. The solution in the build space is really slow. So home share allows you to say, we're utilising our existing resources, the resources that we've got, and we're doing something. Whilst in the background, these other things that have to be happening in the housing space are happening, but it's giving you something that you can be doing. It doesn't solve the really big problems, but it does solve some of the smaller problems. It's achievable, it's cheap, it uses available resources, and it's just one string in the bow. That's how I see it. One string in the bow of dealing with housing affordability. But the other good thing about home share is that it solves a number of issues at one time. So I'll go into that. The other good thing about it, this is the main message, is what's good about it, is that it's a global and international activity that you're joining. So you're not making it up yourself. but you're a local community doing it. So every home share, I call it development or innovation rather than a program or a service. I really try and stay away from the language of program or service, but it has to be locally driven. But you're using ideas that have been around for about 30 years and are current all over, the Western world. So you feel like you're part of something bigger. So for all of those reasons, it's good. The challenges, my main message around the challenges is there's not a high, you're not really dealing with high numbers. In Mount Alexander, I say, gee, 10 would be great. 10, we're not really doing a big, so if you're in Gippsland, if you're thinking that you really need to house a lot of people, you've got to keep doing everything else that you're doing, and Homeshare may provide housing, affordable housing for a handful of people. It requires cultural change. It's big. We can talk about that. And it needs to be solid. It has to be a solid, well-organised program. Internationally, the research is that it's got to have a good, sound organisational base. It can't be slapdash. So whilst it's community-driven, you still need to have a lot of the legal boxes ticked. So it's got to be finely tuned. And you learn as you go because it's community driven, because you're working it out. There's no one who tells you how to do it. We belong to Hands, but Hands can give us guidance, but we learn as we go. So that's my main message. It's great, but it's not straightforward.
All right. Maybe let's start, Di, with give us like the main description. Bones? Or the main bones of what is Homeshare and how does it functionally, just very top line, how it operates.
Okay, so Homeshare is based on mutual exchange. There is no rent. It's mutual exchange in that somebody who has an available bedroom and is able to show that is of a reasonable standard. So we utilise similar standards as the residential tenancy standards. We don't house people in substandard housing. So someone who's got a spare bedroom, in Mount Alexander, we created our own, and you would too, but we created our own view of what a home provider was. So we've said it's a person who lives alone, who has assistance needs, and who has a spare bedroom and is other oriented, can be community minded enough to help to take somebody into their house and not charge rent, so that the home seeker is there under a contract. It's not a rental contract. It's a lodger contract under contract law. Signs a contract with the home provider to have some kind of exchange for the accommodation. And the kinds of things that people exchange are companionship, assistance in the garden, but not garden excavation or design or anything like that. It's just assisting with helping keeping the garden tidy, basic housework, sometimes meals. So people who have assistance needs often need some kind of meal support. So it's not care. So the person who moves in is neither a tenant nor a carer. So it's a grey zone. You're a home seeker, and it's a relationship that we work towards with Homeshare. So we work on, it's like any Homeshare situation, except that it's supported. What we say is that you can have independent Homeshare. Anybody in your room there, anyone here can set up a house sharing situation where somebody moves into a bedroom and pays rent. Anybody can do that. Supported Homeshare is mutual exchange, and it's meeting different needs. So we have someone with assistance needs and someone with housing affordability needs, and we bring them together. So we go through an assessment process. People express interest in coming into the program. We assess and screen, and then what in Homeshare language is called matching, we call introductions, And we bring people together in a cafe or in someone's house. It's up to them how they want to have the introduction. We introduce them, and the bars has to be theirs. People have to make their own decisions to whether we've done the assessment, whether that relationship's going to work. They work on the relationship. We have a 4-week trial period, and then we have a contract around 6 months for 6 months. We've decided to do that because we thought that at the beginning, saying that a lot of people were concerned it would be forever, but we said no. Let's start with 6 months and see how it goes, and you can recontract for another 6 months if you want to do that. So it's that kind of a situation where you're bringing people together. They decide whether it's going to work for them. And then we provide support. We contract for a support period to help get it established, and then we tend to walk away unless there are problems.
Yeah. So when I sent the email for this conversation, and there was someone that replied to me already saying that they were interested, that they wanted to offer their house to for someone to share it with them. So how do you go about first just setting these up, but also like how do people meet each other, and how do people kind of find a program?
Well, I think when I first spoke with you, Isaac, I might have said that Mount Alexander Shire is 20 kilometres across. So whilst we have 5 small towns, we're quite small, and we know all of the community groups, the bowling clubs, the community house, the local government, the radio. It's all quite centralised here in Mount Alexander. So the first phase, after we got the funding and all of that, was marketing and education. So I spent a lot of time talking to Rotary, talking to, the clubs, all of that first, and we've got, I've actually left it somewhere else. We did pamphlets and brochures and, stuck them up around the place, hundreds of posters, all that kind of get the message out there about Homeshare, that Homeshare's here in Mount Alexander Shire. And then we organised really the Homeshare phone number, and every document that we do has a phone number and an email on it. And we've got a working group. So the working group is the My Home Network, is Kaz's My Home Network that you've met. The working group comes out of that, and they're sort of the eyes and the ears of it as well. Hang on. Sorry. I didn't know. Did you? My mother is in the next room, and she just rang.
That happens.
The technology is not perfect.
Home sharing, yes.
Yeah. They're the eyes. The working group. So people like this. So last week someone was in the church, went to Uniting Church. So I've talked at the churches and stuff, and someone went up to one of the members in the congregation and said, "Look, I'm looking for somewhere affordable to live," and they gave me the Homeshare number. So we've got the eyes and ears out there, and people they eventually come our way. I've done a lot of work with the. I'll get to the punchline in a minute, but in terms of is it working? But I've done a lot of work with the aged care providers. So because I'm working in Dalkai Health, I also have all of the aged care community-based service providers working alongside of me, and I go to their meetings and I tell them to look for home providers. So a lot of the work is trying to get the flow of people in. That, in terms of my work, I was calling it recruitment for ages, and then I was calling it marketing, and now I'm calling it education. That's the work, is really doing that. That we have no problem at all having home seekers apply. You wouldn't either. Our big challenge is getting home providers. So in terms of where we're up to in what we call success. I'm beginning to sort of shift thinking. I was hoping to have 10. I thought if we had 10, that would be 10 matches. But we've had. I've got slides, but I'm not going to bore you with that. I think that from when we actually it took from June to March to get the program, to get the development set up in terms of getting all of the policies and procedures together and all of the brochures and stuff. That was a long time because I'm working in this big organisation. But since then, we've had about 20 expressions of interest from home providers. I've got 4 active home providers. So there's a lot of work in bringing people in and then saying no thanks. Okay? That doesn't look like it's going to work for a whole lot of reasons. We've had more than that with home seekers. 20 to 30 people put in expressions of interest. I've told 4 people, this week that I can't place. There's nowhere. I haven't got anywhere for them. So I've pretty much all of those people. Not very many of them didn't fit our criteria. Most of those that I'm talking about there fit our criteria. People who live locally, work locally, need affordable housing, are other oriented, are healthy enough in my understanding. The person who moves into the house has to be healthier all around, and I have a very broad view of health really than the person who lives there. The support has to flow that way, and most of the people who've applied are okay with all of that, but in all of that had one successful match.
Yeah, and you talked to me about this cultural, and you just mentioned that this cultural shift or this education that needs to happen, and I guess that also includes with service providers. Like I guess in your case, Delkaya Health, and I don't know if we've got anyone from, I don't think Gippsland Health today. They've been here before. But I guess they also, and you can maybe tell me about how the Delkaya took on the project, but I guess that's part of that cultural education that needs to happen with home providers, but also service providers, and perhaps also, the council in terms of kind of being on board with this project.
Yes, all of that. We've got all of that on board. The home providers that have expressed interest, who've been successful in sticking with the program, I keep calling it the program, are 75 years old to 81, not too much older than that, not too much younger than that, very well educated, very community minded, and but have a particular view really of who they want to have in their house. That hasn't always matched with who are home seekers. So that and the timing of it is the challenge. But we're in our second year, and Hansa, the peak body, tell us that we're still in infancy, and this is where I get back to the learning. Is that as an organizer, we're just constantly learning how to do this. And my view is that this isn't going away. All of the drivers, and I could just do screen share, but all of the drivers for Homeshare are going to be with us for a very long time.
Can you tell us a bit more about those drivers?
Well, about the ageing population. So what we've got in Mount Alexander Shire is we've got almost half of the population are over 65, and in 10 years' time, they're all going to be over 85. So we're going to have 3 times as many 80-year-olds in Mount Alexander Shire, and we haven't got aged care. We have not got an aged care model to match that is residential. All aged care frames from all of the federal funding frames are all community-based. And all of the funding models for my aged care, for those of you who know that, is all piecemeal. We are getting this many hours of service into a house. Someone will come and clean, someone will come and provide meals, and it's all 1 hour here and 1 hour there. It's all these with piecemealed care, right? We've made it into these really small bites, and the relationships are very difficult to establish in that there are no relationships there. So the drivers are that we have a lot of people living alone. The care system isn't very extensive. Loneliness is increasing, and more people are getting more old. And so we're having more of that need, that social isolation and loneliness. Once we get to 75, 80, our assistance needs increase. Most of us will have 2 to 3 health needs each. And our health needs change our mobility, all of those things about our active life. So as we get older, we need to be more active, and our health makes us less active. So all of those drivers are not going away. And Homeshare fits in that space for us growing older. The other part of that picture for all of us is you look around and tell me how many 3-bedroom houses you've got in East Gippsland with one person living in it. I will tell you in Mount Alexander, we have got 1,100 people over 65 living in a 3-bedroom house alone. We've got 3,000 people living over, we have thousands of people, not 50, and you will too, living alone who are over 65. Until our housing, the structure of housing changes, and it's not going to change in 5 years. All of those 3-bedroom houses are going to be there for 20 years until we change the builds. So those 2 drivers alone are with us, older people living alone in 3-bedroom houses. The other side of it may be fixed more quickly, and that's the affordable housing side of this equation. You tell me how quickly you think that's going to be fixed. So we have the drivers, and they're going to be with us for 20 years. So I see it as a learning opportunity. I don't see it as a quick fix. It takes time for us to adjust our set, because as a society, we think about housing in a funny way. A lot of we think it's okay to everything's based around nuclear families. We'll by the time we're 18 or 19, we'll share a house, and then maybe we'll partner up and have children, and we'll live in our own house. But what actually really happens is over 60, all of the wheels have fallen off around that, but we haven't really adapted housing for age. And until we do that, until we start actually thinking about affordable housing as we get older, we still have this funny notion of we're ending up living alone. We're just the way that we're organising things, we just live alone. And we have all of these. We have 2 needs. We have great people who need to have affordable housing. We have great people who are living alone, and Homeshare brings them together.
Yeah, that's great. That's so true. So let's talk about this bringing the 2 people together, and how's the assessment process, and how you make sure that that you have a good match? Is this like a sort of like a dating kind of dating like process?
Well, we've had a lot of discussion about that, I can tell you, at a working group level. And some people say, why don't we just all get them into a hall like you've got, and they can all just meet each other and walk away as a happy family. And maybe that was the best way forward at the beginning. But because we're at Delkai, we had a lot of ideas about risk and what would happen if you did that. So, and also through hands up, what is very clear. So if our early step was to join hands and to talk about the processes of that they had really refined over the last decade or so, which is a face-to-face assessment process. So first, it's a phone call of an expression of interest. I have a suitability set of suitability criteria right at the beginning, so that we don't have to keep going down the path of a conversation if it's obvious that this is not a Homeshare conversation. So one of the things that knocks people out is that they want to charge rent. And lots of people want to charge rent, and that's perfectly fine, but that's not supported Homeshare. That's house sharing. And I've got a and you probably know it too, there's a number of house sharing platforms that I then send people to and say, on your merry way, off you go. If someone rings up and says that they're the child of an older person and they don't want their mum to go into a nursing home, and I may not say, yeah, let's keep going. There are too many problems with that scenario. And on the other side, if I ask, so in the phone call, I ask people how good is their health, and if someone says to me that they see a psychiatrist, or they are really depressed, or they're on suicide watch, or any kind of statements like that, I say to them, well, that's fine, but you need to give me now. You need to follow up and give me all of the medical records that you've got. First, I have to get them to obviously go through consent processes to say that you are healthy enough to share a house with someone. So I don't do any more of that assessment. I get other people to do that assessment. And I've had some really good assessments from people's mental health practitioners who say that they are quite stable and that their medication's holding them. So I don't do any of that. I just ask for that. So I do initial assessment, yes, no, on the phone and through documentation. And then I have a face-to-face assessment with everybody, where I sit down and have an hour conversation about their life, where they're going, what plans have they got, what do they think they'll get out of Homeshare, what do they want to get out of Homeshare, and after that, I have a screening. I do police check, NDIS check, and working with children check. Doesn't take as long as it sounds. The paperwork is a bit grueling, but that requires a range of IDs and that kind of thing. And once I get all of that back, I put those pieces, all of that information together, and I send that to my manager with a recommendation the person is accepted or not accepted into the program. Once they're accepted, then they get they're in, and they get all of the documentation, and we go through what a contract would look like. So the next phase is the legal phase. They need to understand it's a legal contract that we have got our lawyers to write up, and there are parts of it that they can't change, and parts of it that then they go into a negotiation phase with anybody that they are matched with. And then we go to, once they're all clear and they're happy with all of that, then there was a referee check in that. So I have 2 referee checks. I bring people up, I talk to them about their character, I do a character assessment, and then that's probably enough. Give some idea. It's really resource intense in terms of the work that is done in helping people to come into Homeshare, but there's not a lot of salary time in it, really. So if you think about the resources that are used, it's mostly in that once the policies and procedures are clear, I'm employed for 3 days a week, and so it's not that expensive.
Gosh, it seems like, yeah, there's a lot to that that matching or that vetting process, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that because it's you're putting 2 people to live under the same roof, or what's what's really the...
Well, I think it's about learning, about us learning, and it's about us making sure, because Mount Alexander Shire, as you know, we're Castlemaine, Maldon, Harcourt, we're quite everybody knows everybody, and we thought that we needed to always have Homeshare as something where you meet somebody in the supermarket and they say, I'm involved in the Homeshare program, and the other person said, what's that like, and they go, well, it's really great, it's worked really well for me. I feel really safe and secure with the processes, and I've got a really great person living with me. We didn't want too many we thought that we could cope later down the track with matches that didn't work. But we just thought, to start with, we needed to go really cautiously and carefully and have matches that worked so that the town would know it was going to be okay. It's one of the things about Homeshare, the cultural change that needs to happen, is that a lot of people are still really security conscious, and they think that the person that's going to come into their house is going to be a stranger. I think, you know, all that kind of stuff. Oh, I won't know them. I don't want to live with a stranger. So we thought we would go cautiously and carefully, culturally, so that we could keep this going, and it would be positive for the community. And that was a very clear message from Delkai and from the working group right from the beginning, that this wasn't about big numbers to start with, but about successful matches.
Yeah. I've got a couple more questions, and then we'll open up to questions from the audience.
Yeah, great.
I wanted to, maybe if you have a good case study, a good story of a success story of Homeshare, if you can share with us.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll tell you about the story of the 78-year-old woman who has shared houses all of her life, four adult children, and living alone, but two of her adult children lived in Castlemaine, and she envisages herself as sharing her house into her old age, and wants to do that, is avoiding nursing home care as best she can, and knowing that her children are independent and have their own universes of, you know, their worlds, and doesn't want to impose on them. And the home seeker is a nurse graduate at Delkai Health, who had come from Sydney and just didn't know anybody at all in Mount Alexander Shire, but was working there and started to work by living in the hospital residence, and but had always lived with family, had never lived alone, and really wasn't that keen on living in just going and living in shared accommodation, and thought that that would be much more difficult. So came to Homeshare and said, "Can you find me I'd much prefer to live with a family." So the home provider had said to me, "What I want to have, because she still did some part-time work, I'd like to have somebody who can cook me some dinners, because I'm really tired. I'm getting more tired. Cook me some dinners." And the home seeker said, "I'll do anything, but I can't cook." So I rang the home provider and said, "Look, there is a person who would be great, but they can't cook." And she said, "I don't mind. I can have anybody. I'll teach them to cook. That'll be perfect for me. I'll teach them to cook." So in they were both very, very positive, had a very positive experience for 3 months. But after in the third month, in the second week of the third month, she got COVID and felt quite unwell, and decided in that moment that really teaching the other person to cook was taking up more of her energy. And she decided that she really needed to have somebody. And after all of that time, she just couldn't have anybody. She really needed somebody to cook. So at the end, we organised for him to move somewhere else. It was very positive. They still see each other. He still has meals with her family. I then introduced him to somebody else in the network, the home provider network, and they said, no, that wouldn't work, because they also needed somebody who could cook. And he was also doing shift work, so it was problematic a bit for that shift work side of things. But now, even though he didn't move in with that other home provider, he goes out socially with the home provider and the home provider's friends. So what happened here, even though the match didn't last 6 months, the success for each of the parties was fantastic. She got to know better who she could really live with, because it's learning for the home provider too, who you can actually live with. You don't really know till you kind of have people in your house. And he got to meet people because that was his goal. He really needed to come, and he's still living in Mount Alexander Shire. He wants to live here forever, and he's met people, and he would have been otherwise been an outsider. Okay, he was definitely had all sorts of outsider characteristics, and it has actually been a win-win. So I think that our measuring stick of success in Homeshare is also always open. I see that as being quite a success, really.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I guess it talks about those, well, maybe intangibles of, getting that companionship
Yeah.
and I guess, increasingly, I think I was reading in the UK that there's this, they call it like an epidemic of loneliness,
Yeah.
right? Of so many people living by themselves. So I guess it's just kind of targeting different issues at the same time.
It's very interesting. What I'm going to try and do is just see if I can actually share something here. Let me just try and do this. Ad. Can you see that? Can you see that little ad on the screen? So this is where we're up to at the moment. This Homeshare monthly morning tea and chat. So every Monday for the next 3 October, I was going to do it next week, but because of this family business, I've called off the next one. But we're bringing the Homeshare. I wanted to build a Homeshare community. That's my main goal, is to actually it's not about matches. It's about a community of people who think about sharing their houses and it not being rent-based, mutual exchange, building relationships, changing the culture and thinking about how we live as we get older, and bringing that Homeshare community together monthly and bringing in people who are interested in Homeshare to the same meeting, so that when I do my radio talks, when I go around and talk to the Mount Alexander Shire aged care assessment team tomorrow, for example, I tell them all about this meeting that we're having, and I bring people to that, and it gives people a chance to talk about the highs and the lows of Homeshare, as well as, hi Mum, I'm on the meeting. I'll be there soon. No, I just don't. Yeah.
You weren't answering the phone.
Yeah, yes, she's walked in instead. So that's where we're up to. We're building the Homeshare community.
Great. Just one last question from me, and it's if you had to give us a couple of tips for us, it's kind of like we kind of like the My Home Network at the very beginning. What would be what would be your advice for us if we wanted to go the route of Homeshare?
Well, I think that you join Hansa. You tell Hansa that you're interested. You get their advice on getting started, and then I'm a big believer in philanthropic funding. I just don't think you can do it without having a dedicated coordinator. It would be too hard to do it voluntarily. So our first phase took 18 months to get to where, we were where you are, and then we got philanthropic funding, and then because we got the philanthropic funding, we got the hospital to say yes. So we had those things in place. We had the organisation and the money. We got 2 years of philanthropic funding, and my advice would be you try to do that. But you don't stop doing everything else that you're doing as a housing advocacy group. That advocacy has to keep going whilst you do because you'd be able to say, like My Home Network, we're working on the sustainability of the housing. We've got the renters' rights group, we've got Homeshare, because Homeshare is such a quick win in a way.
We just need the millionaire to support us.
Well, we didn't have we had the 100,000. So remember, it's not a lot of money. So we got the 100,000 twice. It's not $1 million.
Yeah. Right.
Funding is ended. Sorry, when that money is done, finished, do you apply again through another fund, or how do you go on financing it?
Well, Delkaya Health. So again, the good thing about being in Delkaya Health is it's an aged care provider, and it provides community-based services for based health services, and provides housing, specialist housing services. So we're convincing the board that this is core work for the organisation, and they can see that, and we're going to be getting ongoing funding through Delkaya because we're big enough. It's big enough that this is small. When you've got the costs of running hospitals, this is very, very small amount of money.
I think that will be our Gippsland Complete Health for us.
Yeah.
And, that started the audience questions. Anybody else have questions for Di?
I'd like to know it's free rent, and I agree with this situation because I was thinking at one time when I was alone for 2 years. Now, free rent, okay, so they get the elderly, so on a pension. So what do they get free rent? Does the elderly have to supply everything, food and everything, and they get all their wages and keep it?
No, it's a very good question. Thank you for that question. The home seeker pays their share of utility. So it's just like a share house in the end. If you live in a share house, you buy your own food, you have a shared meal every so often, but you actually pay for your own food. You can make whatever the utility costs in the house are, everybody pays their proportion. So if there are 2 people in the house, it's 50%. What I do in the assessment process is I ask to see the bills. Some people have got fantastic apps these days where it even tells you how much it costs to cook that roast chook. But most people just go on bills, the paper bills. So I look at all the paper bills, and I actually have to see them, and the house insurance and stuff like that. And we work out what it actually costs to run the house: gas, electricity, water. We don't cover rates. So rates is still the owner's responsibility. There's no contribution to rates. So then whatever the split is, the home seeker pays their split of the bills, just like in any house share. And the food is the same. There has to be an agreement on yours, mine, and ours with the food. And that's all part of the contract. So the person who's on the pension doesn't have out-of-pocket costs with home share. Very important piece of the puzzle.
Great, thanks. Hang on, I'll go up the back here quickly first. Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question. When they say that there are certain requirements to meet somebody to share house, how do you do the process to meet the person with the share house person? So like they meet each other online before, or you are in the middle of the conversation?
Well, one of our advantages over Gippsland is that our distance isn't like yours. So when the home seekers contact me, I say I've got home providers in Harcourt or Malden or Castlemaine, and they're all only 10 kilometres apart. So I don't have any home providers at Mount Macedon or Kyneton or Bendigo. No, I do not have any. I don't take people. Yeah, so everybody has to live inside the Shire, Rule 1. Which means that the introduction, after the assessment happens in people's houses or in cafeterias. If someone hasn't actually got anywhere to live, I do their assessment where it's convenient for them, or I get them to come in. And then the introduction happens at a mutual place. So most introductions happen either in a cafe, in a public place, or in the home provider's house. It's all negotiated.
Okay, Diane, you said that you used a local lawyer to draw up the contract. Doesn't Hansa have draft contracts or examples of contracts?
Yes. Yes, they do. But we utilize their draft, but drew up our own with our own lawyers. And we can share that with you if you're interested in having a look at the contract.
Okay. Look, just to clarify something, who is your manager and who actually pays you? Is that Dalkaya Health, Castlemaine
Yeah.
Health?
Yes, that's right. So one of the advantages for me is that I'm in a large organisation, and I get supervision, professional supervision in that organisation, and I'm managed. I've got a manager that's Purdy Buckle, and then I have the director of the team the directorate that has all of the other social work services in it and all of the aged care services in it. So everything the hospital has, inpatient and community, and I'm in the community part. But then I have connections. So yeah, it's all. And then we've got a big HR. We're a big employer, the biggest employer in town. So all of that makes it easier for me as a worker to do the job. It's a bit clunky. There's a bit more bureaucracy in it, but I think at the end of the day, it's better.
And just one quick one. Do you have police checks for home seekers?
Everybody. So it has to be fair across the board. Everybody has to be police checked. Home provider and home seeker. It's a national police check. It's a point in time. We have 2 criteria. If you're employed at Dalkaya Health, we only require that you have no crimes against the person. But if you're a home provider or a home seeker, any crimes against the person or any crimes against property, then we will exclude you from the program. If those were childhood crimes and they still come up in a police check, then we'll have a discussion with you about that, and we have criteria around that as well. So we don't necessarily hold that against you, but if something comes up in a police check, we hold the right to exclude you from Homeshare.
Hi, Diane. My name's Chris. I have an inquiry on behalf of the provider. If the provider are elderly, they can fall ill, or they end up in a situation where they have to go into hospital. Does the seeker have to find alternative arrangements while the provider's not at home?
Yes, with a lodger, you can't maintain a lodger arrangement if the home provider goes on an extended holiday. If the home provides, so if the home provider goes into hospital and then they go into aged care, then we have got provision in the contract to look after the home seeker. So because we're a housing organisation, at the end of the day, we can provide emergency motel accommodations. We also have that up our sleeve, but we also have in the assessment process and in the contract process, say to the home seeker, this isn't necessarily always going to be secure. The home provider might get sick because they're an older person. They might get sick. We may need to end this more quickly than we thought. We never really know. We don't really know how we're going to end it. It might go for a long time and it might not. So what would your alternative accommodation be if it did end quickly? And so we have a discussion about that, so that if something like that does happen, we've got plans around it. There's a 30-day negotiated exit period in the contract. So a home seeker always has an amount of time to leave. And we don't exit people into homelessness. So that's one of our policies. We're always looking after all of the parties. But tenancy, when you have a look at a lodger arrangement in Victoria isn't as secure as a tenancy. So when I talk to home seekers, I make it really clear that this could last for a very long time. but it's not, it might not. And you don't have a 90-day exit period as you do if you're a tenant. And that's the, you know, that's the deal. But some people can't get tenancies anyway. So it's not always secure, but it's more secure because there's a 90-day exit period in a tenancy.
Anybody else got a question for Di? No? Well, I think that's all. Thanks so much, Di, for speaking to us and also for the great work that you're doing with Homeshare. We can't wait to hear more positive stories coming from the Mount Alexander Shire. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to say just to wrap it up, or something that we haven't covered.
Just that I'm not far away. You know, Isaac can ring or email if you have got any other questions, or you just problem solving, whatever. What we've said at Mount Alexander is that we can't really provide Homeshare outside the boundary, but we're really, really happy to be a community resource and help others set it up. So it's one of our goals in a Mount Alexander Shire Homeshare is to help other communities do what we're doing. So that's part of my job too. So I'm very happy to just keep talking. It's great.
Right. Excellent.
As soon as the housekeeper is going to the share house person and they sharing, how do you keep contact with them to know how is everything going? Like every weeks or every 2 weeks?
Yes, that's right. So there's a built-in weekly for the first month, and then it's really as needed after that. So we just stick around for the first month and make sure that that really what people said they were going to do is working. Just everything's working. They've figured out how to do the shopping, if they've got a kitty, that kind of thing. Work all that out, because really all of that takes that first month. You move in, that's really when you have to start working out whether your communication styles actually work. So we stick around, and then it's really then we say, if you need us, ring us. Otherwise, we assume you're just getting on with it because, you know, you're adults in this space and this is your deal. So then it's independent home sharing after that. Yeah, we're just setting it up, and after that, that's great. Keep going. Or tell us if there's a problem and you need to exit.
That's it. Keep going. Well, we'll see if anybody in the room wants to start a group to discuss Homeshare more in detail.
Yeah.
But thanks so much, Di, for a very inspiring conversation. And yeah, we'll keep chatting for sure.
No probs. Good luck with it.